Hey guys, welcome to the full mix through module, and this is where we apply everything you've learnt so far in the course and mix through an entire song from start to finish. Now you can use the stems that were provided in the quick win exercise at the end of the last module, or you can of course use your own stems and mix along as we go. So to bring to bear all of these brilliant tools that we've been looking at, we first need to know what we want to achieve. So this is where we plan our mix. Now planning our mix just involves a few quick and simple stages in what I like to call the top-down mixing technique. The first is to listen to our song over and over. If the initial gain staging is done, that's perfect. And we need to determine what the most important three elements of the song are. And this is going to be the base on which we build the rest of the mix, because it can be very easy to get overwhelmed when you've got, 15, 20 tracks ready to mix and you simply don't know where to start. So the first goal of our mix is to get the static mix right. And the static mix is basically looping the busiest part of the song and making sure all the levels work then. And then after that we can move into what's known as the dynamic mixing, which is where we can make automation changes throughout the duration of our mix and make it a lot more lifelike and interesting. So what order should we mix our tracks in? Well, now we've determined the three most important elements. Basically, we mix our song in a kind of pyramid, starting with the most important element, going all the way down towards the end where we've got miscellaneous sound effects, and they all bolster those three most important elements. Hence the name, the top-down mixing technique. And we can help ourselves by actually planning out our mix in the 4D mixing space diagram. So let's hop into our mix and loop the busiest part, which is usually the last chorus or drop. Well, we can hear the lead vocals are one of the most important elements, and that's usually the way if you have got a vocal hook in a song. And if you don't have vocals, because it's a pure EDM song, then you will usually have a strong synth hook or some other kind of strong hook. If you don't, then you should. Now we can hear the bass line is playing a kind of bass melody, and that is very distinctive for this song as well, so that's one of the most important elements. Now the kick and the bass in EDM songs are almost always two of the most important elements. Now if you're mixing a pop song, for instance, that's got a diva who's singing, then that would be the most important element, and you mix everything based on the fact that the vocal is the most important. But here we've got three equally important parts to this song, the removal of which would lose the whole vibe of the song. So we've got the vocals, we've got the kick and the bass. So we can hear that's the whole vibe of the song right there. We might want to add the chords as being an important element too. Yeah, they are, but they're not as important as the vocal, the kick and the bass. So that is what we are going to choose as our three most important elements. Now, given the nature of EDM and the fact that the kick and the bass are so important, this song I would mix kick, bass, vocal, and then all the other elements in descending levels of importance. But the next stage of the planning of our mix is to actually sketch it out in the 4D mixing space, roughly where we're going to have each element, just so we know when we go into that project with all these different tracks, we know roughly where we want things to sit, because we've visualized it as a real space. So let's look at our mixing space diagram and place the elements. Okay, well the kick and the bass would usually be front and center. Again, the lead vocals would usually be front and center as well. Now we want the backing vocals sitting behind those lead vocals and probably out to the side a bit. So they're our most important elements. The snare or the clap would usually be front and center as well, although you might have them out to the side. Or we could add some width later on by adding some reverb to the clap. Now we've determined that the chords are an important element. but they bolster those three most important elements, the kick, the bass and the vocal, so we can have them sitting further back in our mixing space and spread around the stereo field a bit more. Similarly with the piano. Now everything else, so the effects sweepers and white noise and elements like that, and to an extent the other drum sounds as well, which there are quite a lot of in this song, they can all be placed around the stereo field, but that is something that we do later on in the mix. The most important thing for these elements is that they don't clash with our most important three elements. So that would mean taking out the bass frequencies that we don't need. That would mean making sure the higher frequencies don't clash with the vocals. And on our mixing space diagram, it would look something like this. Now you can download a free copy of this 4D mixing space diagram from this lesson, so you can sketch out your own mixes. Remember, don't obsess over it too much, but it's important to know where you want these main elements to sit, so we're not getting confused when we start the mixing process. Now there are a few things to remember before we start the mix. 1. Planning the mix is important, but it's only a rough guide, so some decisions will only become apparent once we've started mixing, and some decisions won't become apparent until the end. And this is because a track might sound amazing on its own, but that doesn't matter. It only matters how it sounds when it's mixed with all the other tracks in the song. So make sure your ears are rested. If you've been in a loud environment, leave it a good amount of time, like half an hour, an hour or so, until your ears have relaxed, so you're going to the mix with fresh ears. Time block some uninterrupted mixing time, because if you're 10 minutes in and then you get a phone call or someone knocks on your door, it can really throw you out of the flow. And flow is so important when we're producing music. But although you've got time blocked out, remember to take breaks if your ears get tired or unresponsive or everything's sounding a bit messy. After an hour or so, you might want to go and take a few minutes break. And remember to give your eyes breaks as well, because now we mix looking at computer monitors. If you're sat there for 3-4 hours, you'll suddenly find that you've got a headache or your eyes twitching. So remember to look out the window now and again and just give your eyes a bit of a rest. Constantly be checking your mix at low levels and at medium levels, as well as in stereo and mono, just so you're making sure it's working in mono and stereo and that it sounds good at low volumes and medium volumes. You might bump it up to loud volumes now and again just to see how it sounds loud, but remember, this can be confusing to your ears because things that are louder generally sound better, and over time it's actually going to damage your ears. So be careful about bumping up the volume, and certainly don't do your main mixing at a loud, uncomfortable volume. And the last thing is, just make sure you got some snacks, you got some drinks available, so you're not thinking, oh, I'm hungry or I'm thirsty, I've got to pop off to the kitchen or whatever. You want to be able to focus, and having everything you need around you is a way to be able to do that. Turn off your phone, turn off the internet, and get some serious mixing done. Now, tea and coffee I find are really great for focus, although I don't go overboard because then it starts making me get really jittery and actually lose concentration. And that's it, guys. We are ready to start mixing. So in the next lesson, we are going to go through each element step by step until we've got the whole song mixed. Now, this is the meat of the course and it's a lot of fun, so I will see you in that next lesson.